You better believe I busted out one of my old Ren Fair costumes for this video. Let's do this. Now, if you're like me, or pretty much anyone else in the world, you were anxiously awaiting Empire of Storms this weekend, and this weekend is going to be the longest weekend because we have to wait until Tuesday to get the next installment of the series, and right now nothing is tiding me over for this. It's just, nothing is cutting it, so I've kind of been like searching for a lot of fantasy in YA lately, and I've started to notice a trend. The main trend in YA fantasy is that we have a kingdom that was overthrown, the royal family is no more, but there is potentially an heiress who has gone missing and the kingdom does not have a queen. And that's kind of the main theme of a lot of YA fantasy. We are following the like princess who either doesn't know that she's the princess or that knows she is but is in hiding until she comes of age to rule her kingdom, and then it's her story of gaining her power and overthrowing the kingdom or the rulers who took over her nation, and her whole journey throughout that. That's just kind of the overlying theme of a lot of YA fantasy, which in my mind is not bad. I really like that storyline. I kind of like seeing a girl kind of come into a position of power because that means there's a lot of female empowerment, a lot of girl chick power, basically. So I'm here to recommend more books that kind of fall into that same vein in the YA genre, and books that I just think are somewhat relevant to Throne of Glass and can kind of tide you over in this long weekend while we are waiting Empire of Storms. The first series that I want to mention was sent to me as part of a Love and Dim Books booktube tours, so thank you Grace and thank you Clean Teen Publishing for sending these to me. That is the True Rain trilogy, and this is by Jennifer Ann Davis. The first one is The Key, the second one is Red, and the third one is War. Look at that cover. That is a nice cover. I like all of these covers, but I really like this third one. Now when I think of YA fantasy and that basic plotline that I described, I think that these books tend to fall into three categories. There is the castles and knights and like Camelot vibe of fantasy. Then there's like the fairy tale type fantasy where it's more like a Disney princess type story. And then I think Throne of Glass is kind of its own sort of category where it has like mystical lore and a vaster world and less about politics but more about like the magic and the power of kingdoms. So in my mind those are kind of three different things. We've got like castles and knights, we've got fairy tales, and we've got like mystical lore. That's how fantasy is divided in my mind for some reason. This is gonna fall more into the like castles and knights type of thing. It's a lot of politics. This is about a kingdom that 17 years prior to the start of the story, a land was invaded and the royal family was slaughtered by this empire. It's pretty much just been in turmoil ever since. The king that moved in is not a gracious king. There's constant taxes. There is a constant threat of rebellion and civil war. And then of course we are following Rema, who is a 17-year-old girl who lives in this kingdom who happens to stumble upon the prince of this horrible king, and it's a little insta-lovey, but I'm gonna say it works in this book. I actually make an exception for this series, but she kind of falls for this prince that she meets in the woods, but this prince also has a terrible family, like I said. His younger brother, who is the crown prince, pretty much just decides to marry Rema to get back at his brother for, I don't know why, he's just a terrible person. So the main story is pretty much her being taken into this royal family that she despises and kind of having a relationship with the prince that she actually likes, but having to deal with this forced marriage with the horrible prince. And meanwhile there are rumors of this key, get it, key, that can kind of unlock the power of the kingdom and bring it back to the peaceful land that it should be. And so sets the tone for the series. This series, I am flying through it. I'm not completely done the third one yet, but I am gonna be honest, I am really enjoying it. It reads so quickly. I didn't really want to take on an entire fantasy series while I was waiting for Empire of Storms. I'm gonna be honest, I can read this in an entire weekend. It reads so fast, and I highly recommend checking these out. The next book that I want to talk about is following in pretty much the same vein, but in a very different writing style, and that is The Queen of the Tearling. It's the same basic plotline where an empire was overthrown and is in turmoil, and we are following 19-year-old Kelsey, who has finally come of age and is the rightful heir to this kingdom, and it's pretty much her coming back into power and trying to figure out what to do with this kingdom that is in chaos right now because it didn't have a proper ruler for so long. So this is going to follow kind of the same like knights and castles and politics vibe of fantasy that this series is, but this is definitely more adult. There are definitely some lines in there that I was like, wow, you're right, this is not young adult. Like, prostitution is very prevalent in this story, and really graphic violence just kind of pops up out of nowhere, so be warned, this is definitely an adult story, not YA, but it's a very similar storyline to kind of both Throne of Glass and True Rain. Now moving into what I described as like the second type of fantasy in my mind is like the fairy tale type of story where it's very Disney princessy, where we are following a girl who is the princess to this empire, but she doesn't really know it about herself and just kind of goes along this journey with a guy to kind of come into power, but it's a lot flowerier and a lot less war intensive and a lot less politic intensive. The book I want to mention is Reign of Shadows by Sophie Jordan. I love Sophie Jordan. Her writing is just so good. She's very good at establishing a world, characters, and an entire plotline in a very short story. Like, you feel completely satisfied reading her books, even though they're a very quick package. So this is a good weekend read. If you're looking for fantasy that is a similar storyline of a lost princess coming into her kingdom, this is going to be your read. This reads very much like a Rapunzel retelling, and I don't think many people talk about that, but I loved it. This kingdom was literally thrown into darkness. It is completely nighttime all the time, and there are crazy, like, huge bat creatures that are the size of dogs that come out, and there's just a lot of awesome, very Disney-like fantasy vibes with this book. And I can't have a Throne of Glass recommendations video without mentioning these books. These are like some of the best books, mainly this one. Give this one a shot. This one has a very similar vibe to the fantasy world that I'm describing, where there's kind of a girl who can come and break a curse and save the kingdom. It's kind of along the same vibes, but not quite. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so we're kind of mixing the fairy tale lore and the Throne of Glass fae lore. But, I mean, if you need a Sarah J. Maas kick, you can't go wrong with her other series, and I'm gonna highly recommend these. You can probably sit down and read this monstrous book in like 2 days, because that's what I did. It just sucked me in. And those are all my recommendations for this video. I know Empire Storms is coming out soon, but hopefully some of these books will just kind of hold you over until Tuesday, because we are so close, guys. We are so close. This is what I'm working through this weekend. I'm gonna highly recommend these. There is also a giveaway. I will leave that linked down below, along with all the information about this series and about this author, because I'm living in this series this weekend. This is where my mind will be. That's where I am. I'm in Greenwood Island. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you're reading some amazing books. If not, check some of these out, and I'll see you in my next video.